Welcome to Movie of the Year, the only podcast that has the science and the screaming to unequivocally figure out what the best movie is of any given year. We are in the midst of 1975, and this week we are diving into a movie that it's insane that the three of us have never talked about before.
I'm scared to dive into it.
It is Jaws by one Steven Spielberg. Whew. I'm your host, Mike. Greg, you're scared of diving into it.
I'm scared of diving into it or swimming around it. No aquatic imagery for me today. But I'm not afraid to talk about this movie because it is a rip-roaring good time and also a very good movie. It earns its distinction as the first great blockbuster.
Wow, Greg just diving in before his co-panelist is even introduced. He's just like, I'm going to start talking about the movie.
I got to move all the time, Mike. If I stop moving, I will die. I'm a lot like one of the Shark Tank guys.
He also has those cold eyes, those dead eyes, those doll eyes.
Dead black
doll
eyes. Ryan.
I am doll parts. Doll eyes.
What if Courtney Love played Quinn?
Or like Johnny Cash covered Nine Inch Nails. Quinn just covered whole albums.
Ryan.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't jump in because I actually have a glass of water in front of me, and it's scary. What if there's a goddamn shark in there?
That's where they live.
In Ryan's glasses of water?
In any body of water. They say the average person swallows 8 sharks a year.
While
in their sleep.
While sleeping.
Also, stop drinking water in your sleep. Quick way to die. Gentlemen, what was your experience with Jaws before preparation for this?
I probably didn't have to watch it. This is like a TNT TBS all-time classic. It's on constantly. It's referenced constantly. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things that, like, if you just go back through parodies and satires, you could piece the movie together.
Yeah, like you could make the movie just out of like scenes from The Simpsons and Saturday Night Live.
But so often with those, when you watch it, you go, yeah, I remember those parts, and I would say this destroys those other ones where you lose so much of the heart and spirit and meat of what makes Jaws an amazing movie.
The references are just pale copies of the original.
Oh, yeah.
You do. I think that you do have to set it in a certain order. I think Spielberg did a good job of, like, not using the satires and parodies that would come eventually when he made the movie, but like actually shot the original smart. And then put it in order that made sense.
But I think there's some that like are oft referenced, and then you watch the thing that's always referenced, and you're like, yeah, that's about what I expected.
Well,
and
like when he says
Jaws is doing it.
When he says we're gonna need a bigger boat, he doesn't even fucking say that.
Yeah, is this, you're gonna need a bigger boat?
Yeah, and he puts the onus all on Quinn.
Don't misquote it, dummies.
You feel like the movie's gonna do that same zoom in that uses on the beach, where they like bring the camera back but zoom in at the same time before he delivers that line. We're gonna need a bigger boat, but instead he says it the most offhand. Like,
you're gonna need a bigger boat.
You're gonna need a bigger boat, buddy. This is a tiny ass boat.
I'm very excited for the show, which is weird because sometimes we do movies that, like, you can't. There's nothing more to say about the movie, you know, and it's rare, but sometimes that happens. This is one of those. But the movie is so. I would put this in Casablanca on the same level of basically stop making movies because there was magic that happened that will never be recreated, but also. Let's make so many movies because look at what they could be. And even if they're like half as good as this is everything movies were created for. This is perfection.
Would you say there's a lot going on beneath the surface?
Oh my! If I was the greatest tagline writer of all time, I would.
I think that Casablanca and this are a good comparison because they're also not movies that like the opiated masses can enjoy them as well. And there's a lot to chew into. Like that you can do both things at once. I think it's a hard balance beam to balance on, and these two do it.
Also, the filming of both movies were an absolute shit show. Like, just falling apart nonstop, and they had to keep reworking everything. And both Jaws and Casablanca, they were getting script pages the morning of shooting, and I think that sort of speaks to the magic. Not that I think that's a good strategy,
right? If you go out to do that, you're going to be an asshole, make a bad movie.
Yes, that's not going to work.
It does show in some ways, though. Not that, and I don't mean that as a criticism, but like I can see that this is kind of a pieced together movie in some ways.
Yeah, but I also think that so many of even the best movies that we've seen, they set out to make the best movie,
Right.
Barry Lyndon. That guy did not set out to just be like, oh, this will be frivolous and fun, and let's see what happens. I don't know. Everybody just have fun today. And it's not that bad. It's okay to go out and set out to make a truly great movie. But how these were made and then what we got. We don't have to talk about Casablanca.
Yeah, we
just
can stop.
Casablanca. How Jaws turned out to be everything that movies should be and will be. This puts Steven Spielberg in the Hall of Fame alone.
There's so many scenes where you're just like, man, you're really good at making movies, Steven Spielberg. And usually when you notice what a filmmaker's doing, you hold it against them because you're like, you're supposed to be smarter than that. But there are a couple shots of this that when they're fully realized, you're just like, hey, man, you're good at this. Mm-hmm. You know what? You're good at directing movies, and you should keep it up.
Sometimes less so. There's one point where Brody figures out who his enemy is and then glares at the ocean, and it zooms in on the ocean and glares right back.
I honestly like that shot.
It glares right back, just like the ocean always is. So if that's Ryan's experience with the movie, Greg, where are you at? Did you also not have to rewatch this film?
No, I had a little bit of the opposite experience in a way, which is that it is so ubiquitous. It was on TV all the time.
It's like, why watch it?
It was exactly. Right. So it was the kind of movie I realized I had seen all of it in parts. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't until the couple viewings I did for this episode that I really got to appreciate it, because it was just something that was on and had commercials in the middle that my dad used to talk about. And honestly, it scared me. And so
You've also lived the movie. You've rode the movie. You were on a tram multiple times in your life when Jaws just came up and almost attacked that tram.
That's true. Although most of the times when I go to Universal Studios, they're like, we're fixing the shark right now, so we're going to skip that part. And you can look in and you can just see it, and it's a half a shark in a pool, and you're like, man.
Art imitates art. Where they're just always fixing that shark.
So as much as it was like in the cultural DNA, I still was not really familiar with it until this. And the thing that I was shocked about was like how much is going on in this movie. Mm-hmm. A lot of times when there's like subtext, at least on some level, they sit on it a little bit. So you're like, oh, okay, they're doing something deep here. In Jaws, it is going on. But, like, if you're not into that part of it, don't worry. We're going to get back to the shark in a second. Yeah, but it's there as well. It's making huge cultural statements at the same time that it is, like, putting kids in blenders and then having, like, the whole ocean turn red.
Yes.
Which is why you can love this movie as a kid and as an adult, Yeah. And it doesn't really matter how much film school you went to.
Which, for me, is very little.
As an adult, you still understand.
Like a day.
It's a hell of a day, though. You still understand, like, that this movie might be working on multiple levels.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Greg. We're in the Orca together. We don't need a bigger boat. I saw it like once when I was 7, and then bits and pieces my whole life. And even when I was like, oh, we're doing it, it's supposed to be great jerk-off motion. Like, I was like, okay,
really?
Let's see. Yeah, I have a problem.
I don't think you can remember how good this movie is. Like, I think you have to
the last time you were
it.
7. Like,
yeah.
What did I know when I was 7 years old? At that point, I was like, the best thing Spielberg ever did and ever will do is Tiny Toon Adventures.
Or Hook. It's like Jaws, Dirty Dancing. Yeah, sure, movies are great. I already know.
But it's also that, like, I think I'm the least Spielberg of the three of us. And his misses are too big in my head and too recent. And so I never got on board early enough.
Patreon listeners will know that Mike just gave us a huge clue for the director's draft.
Yeah.
And now Greg and I can sit on Spielberg.
The director draft, which everybody should go to our Patreon to check out. We're talking about great movies will come. If I never see a new Spielberg movie, I'm fucking
that's
fine. I saw the post, asshole.
What about Ready Player 2?
Even more. I should update my reference. I saw Ready Player 1, asshole.
Yeah. Ready Player 1 is the worst
trash.
thing to ever happen.
All right.
Including 9/11. Let's go to commercial.
I would watch... Let's go to commercial. I don't want to say what I was going to say. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, just dive right into Jaws' mouth.
Hey, guys, thank you so much for listening so far. And let me just tell you that everything ahead of this commercial is much better than what came before it. That's my guarantee. While I have you here, let me tell you about a website. It's called yourpopfilter.com, and it's everything you need that's related to Pop Filter. Everything Mike, everything Ryan, everything Greg, everything Cassie, everything is there at yourpopfilter.com. While you're there, go to yourpopfilter.com/Amazon. Make that your new Amazon bookmark and do your shopping from there. That way, we get a little piece of the action and Amazon doesn't. Make sure you're also listening to everything that Pop Filter has to offer, which includes the Superhero Show, a podcast that covers every single TV show that's based on a comic book or comic book property, and Movie of the Year, where we sit down and try and figure out what is the single greatest movie of any given year. That's Superhero Show, that's Movie of the Year, and that's yourpopfilter.com. Rate, subscribe, review. Bye.
In 1975, a 27-year-old named Steve broke box office history and changed the way the public goes to the movies and how studios market their movies forever. Made for less than $9 million, Jaws would be the first movie to break $235 million at the box office and create the summer blockbuster as we know it. Based on the best-selling book of the same name, Spielberg blended Hitchcockian horror, political commentary, and the terror of isolation to create a pulpy, character-driven thriller that would go on to spawn countless ripoffs and elevate Spielberg into the top tier of Hollywood. Tastebud, I ask you this. Jaws is infamous for being so scary it made viewers not want to go back in the water. But is it scary, though? Is it even attempting to be a horror movie? A thrilling movie? A simple action movie? Speak more on that.
I mean, what if it didn't just invent the blockbuster by making a lot of money, but invented the blockbuster by sort of inventing the genre in that it's all of the stuff that we want for movies and appeals to all crowds, you know? So, like, we can't get that scary. It's way more violent than I think people remember.
Yes.
But it's still in this way where it's not a human committing the violence, you know? Like, it's not like, here's a psychopath that is, you know, is there a psychopath in my family? Obviously in mine, yes, but
in general.
And then we've got these funny moments, we've got these family moments, we've got the suspense, we've got all of it, like all blockbusters needed to do from then on out, is just sort of include everything.
But
this is Greg.
Wouldn't you say that it doesn't just like combine genres? I feel like it does a lot of shifting between them in a very like pointed way. Like, for instance, the opening of this movie is staged as a horror movie. Mm-hmm. Like, it starts with there's gonna be sex, you see a little bit of quasi-nudity, and then the naked lady gets murdered.
As much nudity as Spielberg could handle.
Yeah.
The shark punishes teens having fun the same way Jason and Freddy do.
Yeah, definitely. And then, that whole thing comes off very horror movie to start off with. But then there are times in the movie later when the shark is actually attacking them where it's not staged like a horror movie, really, and it could be, where the musical cues are not horror music cues, they're more like adventure music cues. And so one thing I was struck by watching this movie again is how it's not always just trying to scare the shit out of you.
Right.
But when it does, even now, when I watched it 2 times basically in 1 week, there are still shots where just the dumb-looking shark appears, and I'm like, oh, no.
But that's...
The not trying to scare you always makes the scares harder. The part where Brody first sees the shark, only he does it, and he does like a double take when it jumps out of the water. Like, that's fucking hilarious. If they did do a different music, and then every time they do a little success, John Williams turns down the dun dun and goes like, we're all winning today. It's super funny.
When Quint goes to the, I don't know, boats, but like he's on the little dock at the end of the boat. And Hooper is driving and they're chasing him down. It's like, follow my hand. John Williams has turned that into a jaunty little adventure.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
I feel like everybody obviously remembers the da-na, but when that dread has to go away,
right?
What replaces it is like, we're doing it, we're going on adventure. And yet watching it this time, that started to horrify me a little bit too, because you realize you were watching these guys fight for their lives, and they seem to have a really hard time keeping that in mind.
And you don't know at this point, too, that Quint has gone full-on psycho.
Crazy.
So, like, he
30 years before we met him.
Yes, sure.
But like some deeper thing happens with him in this, right? Like he decides he is definitely going to die.
It's a suicide mission, and I'm going to include these other 2 people on it.
Yeah, you can't bring other bros on your suicide mission.
He doesn't like people. The fact that he's sort of bonding with both of them in different ways isn't changing his plan that he's going out. Like, he killed probably and watched a lot of people who he was closer with die in the water because of sharks. Who cares that these 2 guys I met a day ago will die with me?
I think and this does go back to what Greg said, that Spielberg is the master storyteller, maybe of all time. You know, like, if you want to talk about who's the greatest director of all time, I don't know if Spielberg gets there, and I think that's because a lot of like sentimentality and tricks and popularity that brings him down that list. But I do think that he's the master storyteller, and so what we see in Jaws is just earning. I'm going to earn and earn and earn more and more throughout the movie, so that when not only in a scene with just Brody looking through a book did I earn you to have dread, even though I'm not sure.
Dun, dun,
but also when the shark flops up on the boat, something that doesn't look great and a shark would probably never do.
Yeah.
We're just with him. We're like, you know what, dude? You have earned every possible filmmaker point that you can do whatever you want to us.
And
now.
does it actually make us like it more? That's what I was reflecting on this last time, because it's when I was watching the movie this time, I was a little surprised at how cheesy some of it looked. But instead of being like, it reminded me a little bit of Death Race. Instead of looking cheesy and then I don't like it, it looks cheesy and then I'm like, I don't know, that's cool. It reminds me of how shitty stuff used to look.
But it's not the movie.
It's a different kind of. There's a weight to its cheesiness versus now when things look cheesy, it's because Harry Potter's a noodle boy.
Yeah.
And that's not fun. Where this is like you could actually get hurt by that shark. Like when Lucas visited set, they were fucking around and got his head stuck in the shark and then ran away. The filmmakers and producers ran away so they wouldn't get in trouble. You can't do that with noodle boys.
The other thing, too, is that we're seeing we're right now in sort of the peak of this fuck the studios, let's get down and dirty and gritty. And I'm not, maybe those movies didn't really make the bracket, like those movies are sort of on the periphery of 1975. But here we're dealing with somebody who reminds us, no, you do, like, you are capable of being scared even though it's fake. You are capable of being thrilled even though it's not about, look, I borderline made a documentary about what it's like to be on a shark. It's about buying a ticket, and you're not.
Remember the magic of the movies.
Yeah, you're not when you go on a roller coaster. You're not like, oh, is this roller coaster pissed and it might kill us? You're like, no,
I do want to go on that.
This is all carefully planned out and still thrilling as fuck.
Yes. And that harkens back to he created the blockbuster that's doing all these things. We say this a lot, but the Marvel template wouldn't exist without Jaws. Like, and there's for that blending of all the genres.
Oh yeah. Although I think in the Marvel movies, they you don't think of it as so absurd that the people are like cracking jokes in the middle of this. I think part of the point of Jaws is like when you are exposed to intense danger, you start acting really weird.
Your brain breaks a little.
Yeah, and so because they're like, we see the shark, and then they're like, everyone run to your battle stations. And then Hooper goes and grabs his camera and tries to get a picture. Quint runs in and immediately gets on the phone and starts gabbing with the people back on the shore. It's like they don't always handle danger correctly. And one of the things they do is they joke to diffuse it. But that diffusing it sometimes is not in their best interest. It's not helping them, actually.
They joke and they drink.
Well, there's so much weird drinking in this movie.
I do think that in a lot of ways, the shark saved Brody from a midlife crisis. In certain ways, he was sort of stoked that it was there because he was going or about to be going through something very existential and probably harm his family. Maybe not physically, but do some damage.
Emotionally.
There's a real shining quality to this. I mean, he goes off to a remote location, and he's clearly this is another thing the movie does not lean on, but there's clearly a lot of commentary about his personal alcohol consumption and the alcohol consumption of people around him, including dudes who are hunting a shark and probably should not be fall down drunk.
Yeah, you want to be clear-eyed, full
in
hearts,
case the
can't
shark
lose
attacks
sight
the
of that
boat,
shark, right?
Like he does at the end of that scene.
I mean, the way that Hooper talks him into going on the night trip is like, no, you're drunk enough. Like, you've officially drinking enough liquor. Now we can go.
And I mean, I think, that is something that is beneath the surface and is what, part of what Jaws, the shark itself, is sort of standing for, which is this problem that we are not fully aware of, but is actually claiming, and sometimes in very gory ways, people all around us. But then it kind of goes away, and we don't deal with it. We don't confront it. And I think one of the other things that prevents this movie, just to go back to genre for a second, from being completely a horror movie is, and again, Jaws does not lean on this in the way that some stinky horror movies do, but this shark is only part of the problem. Like, the shark is not actually the worst part of what's going on. There's not a lot of who is the real monster, said in this movie, but look at the way government is portrayed. Look at the way Quint is portrayed. And then even Quint's story about the USS Indianapolis, he is quick to point out we were delivering the atomic bomb.
Right.
And you know what?
But
This
the bomb still
story
got
where
there.
I was so horrified, where you were just horrified by all these things that happened, yeah, we still delivered that fucking bomb. And it's like, wow, the shark pales in comparison to that. But
They
makes
should have dropped sharks.
it's such a tangible thing for him to be upset about, though, right? He can hate sharks the rest of his life and not have to deal with the fact that
inward.
Yeah, he is completely traumatized by both the disaster that happened to him and the disaster that he helped
cause.
cause. Boom.
Well, can't not. We have so much more to talk about just in this area, but we are out of time. We're going to take a quick break and talk about something that has nothing to do with Jaws.
Mount Rushmore!
As we all know, Mount Rushmore is a tiny hillock on Amity Isle dedicated to the 4 douchiest presidents in U.S. history. We're not here to talk about that at all. We are talking about something that's actually important and affects us all deeply. 1975 fashion. We're going mountain to all the fashion of 1975.
And I promise you, we are not going to bring you 74 fashion.
Oh, my
We're not
God.
going to bring you 76 fashion.
Perish the thought.
This is only going to be the fashions of 75 specifically.
I realized something doing these fashion Rushmores for years that are old. A lot of these, like a lot of people will say like the 70s are back or the 90s are back. It's never for stuff that makes the Rushmore. It's always for like the smaller things on the side. But in order to make the Rushmore, in order to be so iconic to be attached to that year, you have to be fucking gross.
Yeah,
you just have to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, it's really honestly what it is it's like it's the fashion misses of the year. Really, so
That's
we're
what
gonna,
find the year.
we're going to talk about all the fashion crimes because like a lot of just like the floral prints of the 70s are back now because they look pretty, right? It's the weird oranges and purples of the 70s that perhaps are not going to come back.
But floral prints probably had, popular at some point in every single decade. So
timeless quality
For hundreds of years since man
Since
first went
flowers,
out. That
really.
flower's pretty. I'm going to put it on my hair. Ryan, what do you got?
I think that 75 is owned by one particular look. And usually we focus on the women because that's more
They're so
interesting.
pretty.
But dudes in their goddamn leisure suits have to be discussed. It's like it's the coat and the pants match, and that's typical of suits, right? But it's usually like gray or black or tan.
Not like
if you're going to be the
maroon.
worst president of all time. But like the hot pink or navy, like dark or light navy blue. These suits,
Light navy blue.
which I guess are like denote leisure. Like this is how you would sit around your house watching
I
television.
think the fabric is also
Yeah, they're like
more
easier to
leisurely.
clean and stuff.
They're on the way to the velour juicy jumpsuits.
Yeah. It's because like if you pour a whole drink on them, it'll just like because they're synthetic, it'll just beat up and just come off, and that's part
you know,
of the
it's
leisure.
1975. We're all at a swingers party. You're gonna spill a drink.
But I do think that part of 1975 was going to work and then hitting the club right afterwards, and you don't want to stop and change. You want to just be that gorgeous all day long.
Every time they cut to like a bunch of detectives in Dog Day Afternoon, all the detectives were wearing leisure suits, and that's why they all look so crazy. Because instead of just wearing like nice regular suits, they all had these really loud, flame retardant and spill-a-verse.
I just love that like 2 or 3 piece suit is something we could do every year. Ever. Like we could always do that except for 75 leisure. We're just this is a different kind of suit.
It's going to be the suit made of like sweat suit material that they're coming out with now post-pandemic.
All right, that is right up there on the mountain. Inarguable. Greg, can you do it too?
There is a lot that like denotes what fashion is. And one thing that these movies have already made abundantly clear is when it comes to 1975, women could wear a lot of different things, but they had to be stick fucking thin. Like I know a lot of times we want women to be thin, but in 1975 they all looked emaciated, dehydrated, like they're going to blow away in a second, and like almost no woman in any of these movies has any curves to speak of at all because the aesthetic was the twiggy, heroin chic, rail thin styling.
And when Greg says Twiggy, that's not a description word. There was the most famous model of the time is named just Twiggy.
She was called Twiggy, yeah.
She had a name. They were like, I'm not going to learn it. Look at you. You're Twiggy.
And I mean, it's called heroin chic because it's like the product of like a drug addicted
Heroin
lifestyle.
because they're women, and that's the women form of the word
Yeah.
hero. Like they're
The
heroes.
heroes of the modeling world.
So
So just
super
stick thinness.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna put that on the maybe pile.
You son of a bitch.
I'm just gonna put twiggy because I don't know how to carve a mountain of that. It'll just be like an absence of weight.
Put the Blair Witch Project little
Just the
stick figure
stick
thing.
man.
Yeah.
Okay, Ryan, throw
Nothing's
one
twiggier
more.
than that. I am going to love on 1975 a little bit because everyone got to determine their own height. If you were a little bit too short, if you were too tall, I don't know if
Yeah,
there's
I don't know.
anything you
Yeah, I was like, wait, what are you doing?
Walking on your knees, 75 fashion.
But if you were a little too short, you could just pick the size of platform that you were going to walk on for the entire night. And this did not just go for women. This was all genders had an inch or two or maybe three. And sometimes you don't have to put this on the mountain mic, but it was see-through. And that's fucking dope. You're not even going to try and make it blend into the shoe. You're just going to make it clear ass plastic, and I'm going to walk tall.
Put a little
If
fishy
people-
in there, maybe.
yeah,
Fish, yeah.
People are a little tipsy. I want them to think I'm floating 4 inches above the ground.
I think it's cool though because what it's like you're doing is like, well, listen, it's not about me being 4 inches taller. It's about having these cool heels, and so I designed them so that you'd get to appreciate how cool they look. Does it make me 4 inches taller? Yes.
Yeah, also, yes. I hate to do it. Platforms are on there. Greg, come on, buddy. You can do this.
Okay. At the time, I don't know of another time where this was such a popular fabric, but camel's hair. Everybody had to have like a camel's hair jacket. It's like specifically men. It looked like a tan jacket and have like a little bit of actual like hair on it called camel's hair. It was very big at the time and has not like made it out of the times.
It's like a chamois.
It's not a chamois, but it's like
chamois?
it's a heavy, thick. I don't know if it's literally there. If it's literally
Camel's
made
hair?
of camel.
Just but that heavy tan jacket.
Yeah.
So this isn't like the monks of the 1800s who wore horsehair vests to punish
No,
themselves.
this is like when we watch 3 Days of the Condor. He's got a very famous camel's hair, like beige jacket that he wears. That's right on the cover. And a lot of men, like those earthy tones were so popular then. A lot of men bought this jacket, and it's just like a beige kind of heavy jacket.
I'm glad you kept talking because I was going to say no way in hell if you just said camel's hair. But also, it's not like any of us to just stop talking after the one word. But
Camel's
yes,
hair.
that
Enough said.
tan jacket for fucking sure. And apparently, we all learned it's camel's hair.
There's a tweet going around that said what people think of the 80s, and it's like somebody, I know this is the 70s, but it's like the 80s. It's somebody in like bright neon workout clothes, and then what the 80s actually were like, and it's a picture of a McDonald's ashtray that is just brown.
Yeah.
And the whole point of it
See-through
was
brown.
that people now do not understand how just fucking brown everything was.
Yeah,
like,
the neon was in defiance of all the
yeah,
brown.
that was the punk rock, but everything was just these earth tones, and it was gross.
And
Also,
also-
smoking at McDonald's.
Yeah,
gross.
just, like if you just wanted to go eat at McDonald's, which is already gross, there would be someone at the table next to you smoking the entire time.
In 1975, I would go to a McDonald's, get a pack of cigarettes and 35 hash browns, and just enjoy my morning.
It is crazy how the mid-90s were just like the 1970s, because I remember visiting my Nana and breathing into my water cup because the ice sort of filtered out the smoke while we're at the restaurant while I was a little kid trying to eat. Ryan, we only got one more spot on this mountain. Can you do it right now? I'm letting you know, probably not, because that's not dramatic.
Okay. Well, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw up something that I had to research.
that I ate earlier.
It's 35 hash browns, which you will always throw up. It's something that I did have to read about, but it's this. I didn't know there was a name for it. I knew that a lot of people in the 70s looked similar, but I didn't know there was a name for it, and the name is peasant.
Yeah, dude.
And it's just basically you look like you're in nice rags, but rags nonetheless.
It's
like,
kind of hippie-ish.
yeah, and I think this is sort of like transitioning from hippie into let's wear suits and do coke of the 80s, where it looks kind of nice, but really, if you actually look at it, you should be cleaning a chimney or sweeping up for your evil stepmother.
Yeah, if you imagine like a woman with long, straight, brown hair and like kind of an ill-fitting top and like a flowy skirt that looks like it's stitched together from like 4 different pieces of fabric. It's a very 70s, very sort of like comforting look.
And we look at the we look at the print, like what are the colors that are on it, but we don't really typically look at the style of it. And yeah, it's a very different style. The flowiness, like Greg said, is peasant like, I guess. Yeah. To
right, that's on the
cover up
pile.
how thin you are.
Gregory.
Bell bottoms, wide-legged pants, right where your foot pops out. Boom, a flare. You get an even more, in case you want to put on some big shoes or something. And nobody knew what anyone's shoe situation even was sometimes because those bell bottoms could go right to the floor. Little skirts that you put on the bottom of each of your legs.
Like bed skirts for your ankles.
Yeah.
I get bell bottoms sometimes when I eat a bunch of 7-layer burritos.
I get it. Like Taco Bell and then your bottom like your butt.
Yeah, my butt blows
like
up.
it. You each get one more. Make it quick.
I'm going to go with headbands. Just are you sweating? Are you not? Who gives a shit? Just throw on a fucking headband that a tennis player would wear, even if you're just like doing a podcast.
Especially if like you're in the background of a scene. They're just like, hey, you guy, throw on a headband. You're not going to see 5 people and one of them's not wearing a headband.
People need to know what year we're filming this.
Yeah.
Quickly, do something that's very 1975.
I'm going to go for mine, turtlenecks. Turtlenecks were not just like something that people did to keep their necks warm in the 70s. Like if you wanted to look handsome, you
it's scholarly,
as
right?
a man, you would put on a turtleneck. A lot of times you would put it under your camel hair jacket. It would be like a cream turtleneck. And again, we're going to see this in 3 Days of the Condor because like Robert Redford, that movie is like the epitome of cool and sexy. And it's got that nice turtleneck so that you're getting maybe a little peek of his neck flesh, but not too much.
But
he's a gentleman.
That's for after hours.
That's for his
after
wife.
dark.
That's for his wife.
I'm so sad we're doing a Robert Redford movie, and he's not like Elliot Gould or John Cazale. Like he's just a straight up handsome guy. That's not the
he's
year
just
for
always
this.
handsome. Yeah, not like a potato faced weirdo.
It's so funny because in 3 Days of the Condor, he's supposed to just be like this bookish type, not like a real cool CIA agent. But he can't pull that off for even 1/2 of 1 second.
Sometimes you're just Robert Redford.
Yeah, you're just born that way. Sorry, Robbie.
Yeah, imagine Channing Tatum trying to play a dowdy librarian. No.
Put some glasses
Not
on him. I'm
gonna
sure
work.
it'll
Takes the
work.
glasses and then he waves his hair out.
Yeah, the layers, just like layers and layers were so huge in the 70s, and turtlenecks were definitely a part of that. Your 1975 Mount Rushmore of fashion is leisure suits, platform of varying sizes shoes, camel's hair, and turtlenecks representing layers. I'm surprised nobody did jumpsuits. All women were like, screw more than one piece of clothing. I'm wearing a jumpsuit in 1975, but that's okay. When we go back, it'll be to Jaws.
Well, that is very, very funny. Or very sad. And perhaps now you have something to think about. Or very problematic. And perhaps we have something to think about. But in any event, I'm sure you have some reaction to what you're listening to. So why not check us out on the social media? You can go to Instagram or Twitter and find us at YourPopFilter. Email contacts@YourPopFilter. Hey, everybody. Keep watching
Taste
them
buds,
movies.
other than the occasional distraught sheriff's wife or occasional distraught mother of a dead kid, Jaws is a manly, manly movie full of manly, manly men. But what does Spielberg bring to the conversation about masculinity?
I think whether he intended to or not, like, I think that a lot of people give a lot of credit to Spielberg for actually saying a lot of things in this movie. And I'm not sure if that's true. And in fact, he has said that he did not. But what he did was he set up this movie to be in such a way where you could write anything on it. You know, Jaws, you can just put like, oh, that's Watergate or whatever. And the fact that we had Brody and then Hooper and Quint means on either side means that we can talk about masculinity all day, whether Spielberg wants us to or not.
And he specifically does not want us to. He sent us a cease and desist that
Yeah,
we are
I have the
ignoring.
letter in my hand.
Yeah, but, and we get a view that there are layers of masculinity, right? That because at the topmost layer of Hooper, he appears to not be the real deal. He appears to not be a real man. He's a little effete. He's annoying. He's an intellectual. He's got curly fucking hair.
Ew.
You can see this dude coming from a mile away.
The other thing, too, for that list, Greg, is the smirk. Quint's never going to
Yes.
smirk after you
He
say
thinks
something.
everything's kind of funny.
But
I love him. He's my favorite.
In the end, he is shown to be, he is the real deal though, right? Hooper is the real deal because he is tested, because he's willing to sacrifice himself, because he's willing to learn and to teach others. And so it's proven that really, he is a paragon of masculinity, but it's still a very traditional masculinity.
Right.
It's a masculinity of I have to be out there alone on the range and I have to sacrifice myself so the women don't even know what life is really like.
But we do get that thoughtful moment of him before he goes down in the cage, where that we would never get with Quint, where he expresses fear.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little bit, I totally agree with you, Greg, but I think that's a little bit important of I have no spit. And then the other moment that we have with Hoop too is he's trying so hard to conduct an autopsy, and he's about to throw up the entire time. And that's just not something. Quint walks around when you come over to his house with blood-covered hands.
Yeah.
He doesn't give a fuck.
And he just randomly starts singing sea shanties. The actor that plays him is notably drunk in most of the scenes.
Well, and that's
he usually says the most upsetting thing that he can think about.
So
that he thinks for somebody to overhear.
So Hooper, it's on the surface, he's hiding the masculinity almost. He's hiding that he knows every knot.
He's
he
a
knows
rich
how to
kid.
tie. He teaches Brody how to do a bunch of manly things on that ship, and then Quinn is doing the opposite. It's the what mask do you put up? Quinn's, I'm gonna sea chant every once in a while. I'm gonna scratch my fingernails down a chalkboard to get attention.
Oh God, I hated that part.
He seems more put up a facade than Hooper does.
Yeah. He's the one who has to make sure that everybody thinks that he's manly,
Yeah.
And I think that's the direction that we're going, is maybe these people are ridiculous. And Quint, as much as I love him, is ridiculous in all of his old school ways, but also in all of his new school, I have to make even more of a show of being Quint than I did in the past.
Yeah.
Because what if people discover that all of the Jawrs that I have hanging from in my house aren't enough for them to know that I'm the manliest man in Mantown?
And I think, he does it. His whole personality is a result of this trauma that he's experienced. And so we see him taking it up to 11 and 12 because he's getting more and more haunted. And now that the closer he gets to actually engaging with this shark and the more he actually does fight it, the more he becomes this crazy show version of himself, because he's trying to hide the fact that he's committing suicide via shark and dragging these two dudes as if they are barrels of air along with him.
In the meantime, though, Quint also has a moment where I think it's Brody is freaking out, and he knocks over a lantern, and the boat is about to go up on fire, and Quint looks down and then looks at Brody and says, can you put out that fire?
Yeah.
Quint still has that air, too.
So, the instinctual stuff. It does feel he probably
knowing
hadn't...
that panic... Mm-hmm. Knowing that panic and self-reflection in every moment isn't necessary.
Right. You got to turn that off sometimes and just do things. Just smash that radio. Well, I guess that's going too far.
That one's weird.
See, that's the thing.
But it does seem I think he probably hadn't told that USS Indianapolis story. His only friend for decades was the weird red-hatted man who doesn't talk and just follows him around. And he, I think, much to his own chagrin, starts to relate and like Brody and Hooper.
Yeah.
And so he opens up,
tell?
and then he's like, "Oh fuck, I gotta die now because I opened up to these guys."
Oh yeah. Well, what's the point of living? Because now everybody thinks that you're a woman. You can tell the moment that he is opened up to them is he calls Hooper Hoop, and that's when you know that it's all together. But the other thing too, I mean, that scene, probably the most famous scene, right? We all remember Jaws flopping on the boat, and we all remember Brody on the beach with the Hitchcockian camera, and we all remember Brody throwing chum into the water, and then Jaws pops up and he stammers backwards. But the most famous scene is getting drunk at the table.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I think that, one, alcohol allows manly men to do stuff that may not be manly,
maybe take off some of their clothes a little bit.
What does
Look
alcohol
at this.
do?
Look where I got poked in the bum.
But they enjoy each other's company. And then at one point, while Brody is watching, his angel and his devil, or whatever you want to call it, begin to literally intertwine.
Yeah.
Their legs are wrapped around each other on the table, and now Brody cannot tell who is who.
And meanwhile, he's he clearly has some gunshot wound, but he's you know what? They're too into each other, I'm not gonna do this. And that's where you see that he is he has another ideal of masculinity, right? Which he's at that point sober, and he is keeping his trophies to himself.
Wearing a turtleneck, I think.
A turtleneck.
Very
Possibly
1975.
a turtleneck. Yeah. What? I had no idea that the scars from Chasing Amy scene was just
And Lethal Weapon 4.
ripping off this, or homaging this. But yeah, so Brody, it's time we must talk about him. Is he the ideal man because there is no facade? He doesn't try to shove his manliness in people's faces. He's a little vulnerable, but not
and
too
because he
openly
can
vulnerable.
learn. I think that a big part of it is he finds out that there's a shark attack, right? Mm-hmm. And right away his instinct is like, I believe that there is a problem here and I have to protect people. And part of what he does, and I think this is so cool, is he's like, I need books about sharks. And he spends the rest of the movie in his downtime reading all about sharks.
Right. I don't see him reading. He looks at a lot of pictures of sharks.
Well,
I don't
even
even know if he can
page,
read.
Okay?
I think he got that job without even being able to read.
If a book is open, you're reading. That's my personal rule. If the book or TikTok is open, you're reading. That counts as reading.
But I think that the point of any movie ever is to not be an extreme, and so Spielberg makes that easy for us, right? He's like, Hooper's over here and Quint's over here, and just be Brody, and that's what Brody has to learn is to take what he
kind of goes
Hooper.
back and forth between them.
Yeah, and you can do it all, like everything. You, as far as like not just masculinity, but like being a character, you can do. I mean, Quint is to Quint, Hooper's to Hooper, but also Brody is this like being in the middle of them. Like Quint is working class, Hooper is wealthy.
Yeah,
be in the middle, you know. Yeah. And the one thing that I picked up on this time too that I hadn't thought about before, and again, I don't think that Spielberg is trying to do this, but I do think it's the case, is that we are talking about the start of the end of the Hollywood system as we knew it, and we're starting about blockbusters, and all of these people that Spielberg came up with, De Palma and Scorsese and Coppola, they all they wanted to go out and they wanted to make these gritty, dirty movies, and he seemed less sure about this, and I do think that Quint and Hooper is Spielberg is Brody, like standing in the sand saying, I am going to keep one point in the past being, old school and rough and tumble, but I am going to put one step in the future of having all of the technology, using all the tricks of the trade, and being this rich boy. And
he sees himself way more as Hooper, though, right? It feels like
he does. We do, but I don't think he does.
Really? Right. Because man, he cast himself as Hooper. Like he looks so much like him, and he's got the same sort of.
It's about the male fantasy. He wants to be Quint, or at least he wants to be Quint.
Yeah, which is why Brody is where he thinks he is.
But doesn't he? But then obviously, then in the movie he deconstructs that, right? Because he finds out that to be Quint is not to be Quint; it's to be Kurtz from Heart of Darkness, right? And that you can't follow Kurtz into the ocean on his boat because he will just drag you to death, because that's what he wants to have.
But it's still respectable, and it's still a thing that Spielberg knows he doesn't have and wants it. Again, wants it.
I want to talk about the end because Quint's end, it always had to end like that. But the only part that felt like false in the movie between the three of these guys is so Hooper dives down and then just hides.
He just goes and hides, and right? Because he's got the scuba apparatus.
Brody has to be the one to kill it.
Survival.
And it feels like, Brody had to be, because he is a protagonist, so of course he has to be the one to do this final thing. And it rang false on a narrative level and on a here's these three kinds of guys level, because the Hooper we've seen throughout the movie isn't a hider.
Yeah, he goes to sacrifice himself, but when he no longer has a chance, he doesn't sacrifice himself for no reason in the same way that Quint basically is like, I will die by the time this fucking movie is over. There's no way I'm going to live through it. I just won't let it happen.
And that's a knock on that type of masculinity. Right. I think it's much more manly to hide, survive, wait for your time, come back, produce more things for society than say, I am a moron with a hairy chest, and then just go kill yourself.
It's the George Washington from the play Hamilton, dying is easy, living is harder.
There's a play Hamilton?
There's a play Hamilton.
Did this movie invent the idea that there's nobody who's as accomplished or as apt to handle a situation well as a New York cop?
Yeah,
there's very much that diehard energy of he's just your average cop from New York, so that basically makes him a hero in any other context
on this little island.
Yeah. And if you watch the movie, as the shark pops up again, he puts on his cop belt. You can see I'm definitely
time to get
and
serious.
It's a return to at one point also he says to his wife let's go home, and she says, you mean New York? And he's like, no, here. Yeah. You could see him really being no, I'm going to integrate my New York cop identity into this new life.
But I also think that's part of Brody's existential crisis, is that the manliest thing you can do in 1975 all the way up through 1988 is be a New York cop.
Yeah.
In Die Hard, he is in L.A., a frou-frou town full of, like sissies, and he's going to New York cop it everywhere.
Sissies, of course, being what we call cis people.
Right.
Yeah.
That's John McClane's thinking. That's not mine.
Yeah, right, that's an actual quote from the movie. Doesn't he say that everybody's sissies?
Yeah.
But here, he's like, I don't have what it takes to cut it as a New York cop. I can't make a difference. I'm not strong enough. So I'm going to come to this easy life on the island. He's like, choosing the island life
Faux
is supposed to be. Yeah, like basically all he has to do is kick back, but at least be in charge, at least be able to make a difference to these people. And that's still not going to work. And that's the thing that convinces him, all right, no more running. I have to, or if I'm running into the ocean.
I'm running
Jaws.
towards the shark.
All right, that is all the time we have. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, something completely different. Hola, Filterinos. I just wanted to interrupt real briefly and say thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. If you want to support us a little more directly, you can go to patreon.com/yourpopfilter. There, depending on what tier you pick, $1 a month, $5 a month. If you're crazy, anything more than $5 a month, don't do that. You can get extra content. There's extra shows, extra series, behind-the-scenes stuff. You could pay for Ryan to draw you a picture. I can write you a poem. You can get the shirts off our very own backs. All of that and so much more over at patreon.com/yourpopfilter. While you're on the internet, you should check out Shady Monk. He does all the tunes you've been listening to. He's on Bandcamp. He's on Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever kids get their music these days that I'm too old to know. Shady Monk lives there. You can probably follow him on Twitter and Instagram as well. That's Shady Monk. Wherever you get music, check him out. Taste Buds, the rules are simple, but the game is hard. That's right. It's time for Trivia. Ring in with your name once I am done the question, and not before. I was going to say not after, but definitely after. After I'm done the question, ring in with your name, and then you get a chance to go for the gold. If you fail, your opponent gets that chance. Any questions? You've done this enough times.
Yeah.
Any questions you think the listeners might need to hear?
I think we're good.
Okay. Question
They're with
first.
us, Mike.
What? How many Jaws sequels are there?
Ryan. There are 3, Jaws 2, Jaws 3D, and Jaws 4, The Revenge.
Ryan.
Name one.
Greg.
Greg.
Jaws 4, The Revenge.
Greg.
Good job, guys. Good job. Who was furious they got turned down for the role of Brody and refused to work with Spielberg ever?
Greg. Clint Eastwood.
No.
Ryan O'Neill.
Is that Barry Lyndon?
It is.
No. It is Charlton Heston.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Why
did Spielberg
did
recover from that?
Get your jaws off me, you
did.
dirty shark.
Spielberg approached Heston for 1941, and Heston said, "No way. Remember what I said before?" I'm not doing it.
Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
Ryan.
Yes, I do remember.
Okay, good. You're not getting a point for that. Why did Mike refuse to go to the ocean between ages 7 and 13?
Greg.
Greg.
Because Huntington Beach for a long time dumped its toxic waste right into the ocean.
That is a good guess, but I did not have that logic. Ryan.
Teeny peepee.
Teeny peepee. It's not it. I almost drowned when I was 7, and so I went never again and lived by the ocean forever.
You're the Charlton Heston of drowning.
Does that make Mike a pussy?
Greg.
Greg.
No, you're not a pussy if you don't want to oppose the sea.
Thank you. It was, albeit to be fair to the sea, I was shaking my little butt at the ocean, and then a wave took me out.
Poseidon doesn't like that. That's like the grudgiest god there is.
As much of itself into my throat as it could. Question 6. How recently did Spielberg talk about a prequel?
Greg.
Just
in 2020, baby.
Is that updated? That's updated information I don't have, so I can, you know what? Okay, I'll give it to Greg. What would that prequel be about?
Ryan.
Jaws
babies. Brody, Hooper, and Quint, all his children on a boat with a puppy shark.
Oh, puppy shark.
Greg.
That's not the right answer. Greg.
It would be about Jawrs, the shark at the very center of Jawrs.
Mike.
It'd be about the USS Indianapolis. It'd be about a young Quinn.
We already know that story, though.
What a fucking awful
in that
movie.
movie.
I don't want to
But
watch
now we
these
watch
dudes
it.
get ate for 2 hours.
What's the best ride at Universal Studios?
Ryan.
Greg.
The tram ride where you get to see Jawrs and the monkey and the Fast and the Furious folks.
Hell yeah. Even though that part, the new part is lesser.
The
But yeah.
Fast and the Furious part? That's so awful.
Which two actors legit hated each other?
Greg.
Greg.
The husband and wife.
No.
Yeah, okay.
Ryan.
Ryan.
I'm going to say Richard Dreyfuss and Robert Shaw.
Ryan.
Apparently, Robert Shaw, when it was just the two of them, would say very nice things to Richard Dreyfuss about his acting and about how he liked him, and would like read him bits of his play he was working on. But in public, he would just scream at him and throw things and be a fucking dick. And so Dreyfuss hated him.
The worst part about this movie is the fact that, or the least realistic, is the fact that Quint never has some sort of like sea-going slur for homosexuals that he throws at Hooper.
Or there's also no anti-Semitism, which is good, but it just feels like at some point somebody would have thrown that at him at least a little bit.
I feel like they do with their attitude without saying it out
That's
loud.
what, yeah, I kept feeling
rich,
like,
huh?
well, yeah, like, I mean, yeah, like he's like, oh, you want to sit in your city, count your money. Like, okay, time out, bro. What are we saying here? Let's just like put our cards on the table, buddy.
Question the ninth. What's the best thing at Universal Studios?
Ryan.
Ryan.
Me when I'm there. I wear short shorts that say Universal Studios on the shorts.
Greg.
I
Ryan.
hate that, Greg. You have a chance to answer?
Diagon Alley. It's fucking so cool.
Ugh.
That's pretty cool. The right answer
Mike.
is the Waterworld show.
That did not survive pandemic, unfortunately. They
know,
had to
that makes me-
cancel the water.
They canceled water.
What movie did Spielberg call the best of the Jaws ripoffs?
Ryan.
Ryan.
Is it Piranha?
Yeah, boy, he loves Piranha.
Ryan.
Damn.
It's pretty good.
This is probably before the movie The Meg came out. Because I got to assume
Probably.
now it's The Meg.
Or Deep
You
Blue
would
Sea.
think so. I was Deep Blue Sea. My Head is Like a Shark's Fin is a great movie. The Meg was disappointing. It was not nearly schlocky enough.
What's so funny is you could see all of these ripoffs being like generated from the movie itself. They're like, man, the shark seems smart. Like, okay, that's Deep Blue Sea. Man, the shark
That's the
seems
movie.
big. That's the Meg. Okay, cool.
Man,
you
the
guys think that-
shark seems like it should be in space. That's Alien.
When the movie was over and Hooper and Brody were climbing back up on the sea, do you think it should have said Finn?
Ah, come on, Mike. Hook him up.
Ryan.
Come on.
Yeah. But no, I don't think that.
Is Universal Studios underrated?
Ryan.
Ryan?
It is the supplantation of amusement parks. You think that it's good, and then you go there and you're like, this sucks. This is fucking bullshit.
Greg.
Greg?
It's appropriately rated because that's everybody's true feeling about Universal Studios. So, like, you know before you go, you're like, well, it's not Disneyland.
No,
It's not Knott's Berry Farm.
I always
it's not
get
Six
excited.
Flags. It's the home of the movies.
for that last bit. See, I always
I'm
think
glad
it
Danny
sucks.
DeVito is outside the park screaming that at everyone. Hey, it's
Well,
the
how
home
else
of the
will they know?
movies.
I always think it's going to suck, and then I go and I'm like, that was a good time. I took a nice little tram ride,
It's
sort of
always
napped.
so hot. They built it on
It's
like
the
a hill.
hottest place in California.
What a lot of people don't know that have never been there is that it's two parks, and one is 2 miles lower than the other one.
Yes.
So you have to take a 2-hour escalator ride just to get down to the bottom part of the park.
That's the
They-
best ride.
They also have like a part of it that is like just supposed to be a street on New York, and it's like every really bad New York character I've ever done on this show. Like someone will be hanging out their window and they'll be like, "Yeah, shut up down there! Hey, I'm making a pasta. Give me a break."
It's
Everyone's
a lot
always
of Italian
walking here.
stereotypes.
Yeah.
The other thing too that happened that started when I was a kid is that coming soon to Universal Studios, Orlando only. Shut up.
Yeah.
Shut up, California.
Yeah.
Well, there-
Orlando.
There's no space
The
there.
part
So
we care about.
anytime they add something new, it's always like a 4x4 room that you can just poke your head in and look at.
That's why they're all into the 3D rides.
Yeah, for sure, because they cannot put you on any kind of ride at all.
That Raging Bull ride where you poke your head in there, that sucks.
And just get hit. What is Mike's favorite sea creature?
Greg,
Ryan.
Greg?
giant squid.
No.
But I said it so confidently.
He did.
The blobfish.
No. Something close
Greg.
to that, though. Greg?
Orca, killer whale.
No.
Ryan.
Ryan?
The one with the fangs that just has a built-in lantern right over its head.
Ooh, that lantern thing?
Ryan.
You
Yeah,
like
it's
the deep sea
angler
uggos?
fish. The anglerfish fucking rules.
I would never fucking be caught dead with the deep sea uggos. Those are the worst animals on Earth.
He never has to do anything when he's like, who's in there? He has his lantern already ready.
It's been years since audiences freaked out with what they call cinematic neurosis, the way they did with Jaws and The Exorcist. Are audiences these days just better and smarter?
Ryan?
Yes,
because we don't have a sequel to that train movie where the train comes up to the screen.
We make fun of that, and we're like, well, they never saw movies. People in Jaws and in The Exorcist freaked out because of what they were seeing on screen so much. They went into like shock. People back then were idiots. It's movies, you idiots.
I will say though that I bet the media like found someone who just had a seizure
It was like
for no
epilepsy,
reason and then
they blamed it on
pumped the
that.
shit out of it. Yeah.
And like, okay, the shark does look stupid, but there are 2 or 3 times where it comes out of the dark water where it is scary. So I understand
Sure.
these people.
Do you know what I want
There's
to
horror
see?
movies now that I'm not like,
I want to see
run
an
out of the
article
theater.
about what happens when a shark watches it. Like, how does the shark handle it?
I can do that?
I bet Ari Aster could make a movie that caused you to have like a mental breakdown, Mike. I bet he could do it.
Challenge to you, Ari Aster. See what you can do to my weak little brain. That is all the time we have for trivia. When we come back, our final question about Jawrs. Taste buds, what is it about Spielberg's movie that makes it so rewatchable all these years later, even when you know every single move that the shark makes?
I would say it's some of the most like exciting shots around some rather like simple scenes. I'll give you 2 examples. One is when Quinn is first, or rather when Brody's first talking about shutting down the beach, and like the mayor tracks him down and he's on that ferry across to the island to go talk to the Boy Scouts. That shot is just a conversation about, you know, whether or not they're going to shut down the beach, but it manages to be exciting because of all the action and adventure of watching this ferry get ready to depart and cross the water. And so I think like if you're making your scenes where the characters are talking about whether or not they ought to, like, you have administrative authority to shut down a beach, and that's an exciting scene, then you are going to be fine in the shark scenes as well.
Yeah, the camera is cool, and it is like a good time for you to start noticing the camera when you get to that age of like, these movies weren't just magically made, but like these cameras were placed and these lights were placed. But I really think, and we've touched on this a lot, I think, so far, but the first 10 minutes of the movie, or even like if we skip the hippie getting eaten, the first 10 minutes after that are so chock filled with information in
World
such
building.
a deceptive way where you now know every single character in the town's motivations and why they're quirky. And I think it really speaks to Spielberg's biggest thing, which he is not interested in what the shark is capable of. And maybe it's because he was forced to, but like he is interested in what it does to the people in this world.
And he's also in a very non-invasive way setting up a lot of tension. Like his kid comes in with his hand cut and he's like, I'm going to go swimming. And as the audience, we know like, oh, that's going to be dangerous. So you probably shouldn't do that.
That's chum, bro. That's chum coming out of your hand.
But it's like, it's done in just a couple of seconds in that scene to establish all that.
I think that this makes movies, we all learn the wrong lessons as we always do, you know? And I'm going to disinclude Star Wars from this. I think Star Wars learned the right lesson of, you know, we can sit here and we can describe the personalities of Luke and Leia and Han. But I think that once we get to the 90s or the 80s, we learn the wrong lessons. I think about a movie like Day After Tomorrow, which is not a good movie, but after watching Jaws, it's unwatchable. Because they do the simple steps of saying like, well, these characters have to have dialogue, and that sucks, and I hate that they have to have dialogue. But I will put it in there because I'm not sure why that's the rule, but that's the rule.
Now, you must know as a geothermal scientist that...
and my brother, who's been divorced 2 times. But what we get here is we are just calm and quiet, and we are getting to know these characters. I mean, like the act of Brody spilling the paintbrushes in the hardware store. You know, he was New York. He's not that cool. He is bumbling. He's not super capable. Like it is. I would have loved to do like a rewatch of the first 10 minutes with you guys, and just after we've
down.
Yeah, and we watched it, and just like all of the stuff that you learn in that first 10 minutes is what Spielberg is actually caring about. And that's what makes it rewatchable.
And what's so interesting is you see him on the right path all through the beginning of that. You see that he really is a man of action who can move in one direct path. He's like, okay, there's a problem. I go directly to it. Okay, I can tell just by looking at this body, this is a shark attack. So I know exactly where to go and exactly what to do. It's until he really where this all falls apart in a way is that scene I described. Because once the mayor tracks him down on that ferry, they start confusing the hell out of him, and he doesn't know what to do anymore. And he's so ensnared in a system. How do you protect people? Do you protect people from the shark, or do you protect people from the notion that there's a shark? How do I protect the town? Do I protect its citizens, or do I protect the people that come and pay money to actually like support the town the rest of the year? And by the time all that gets in his head, he doesn't know what the fuck to do anymore.
Now I'm gonna pour an entire bottle of wine into one glass.
Yeah, exactly.
That was confusing.
But up until that moment, he and the movie have been so direct and established everything we need to know, like, to get us there.
But the thing that Brody knows for a fact, and the thing that all movies told us up until the stupid 1970s, was that follow procedure. All you have to do is follow procedure, and you trust in the protocol, and everything will work out okay. And now we have something that has never been seen before, and I'm not sure if I trust procedure. I'm not sure if I trust protocol or the people that are giving orders, and that fucks a guy like Brody up, because Brody wanted to sort of be just coasting, you know? I don't want to be like Hooper or Quint. I don't want to make all these decisions. I love this middle ground that I'm on.
It's funny, his uneasiness. He wants to listen to the mayor, but everything in him is like, the mayor's fucking wrong. And by the time the mayor is literally shovering citizens in, not that fact that they're on the beach enjoying it isn't enough. They need to be in the water.
That speech of him like, hey man, go get in the fucking water. What are you doing right here? You take your family and you go get in the water. And the old guy is just like, all right, and then does it and takes two little kids into the water.
Children.
I feel like that's a misunderstanding of how a town generates income based on having an ocean. Like, it's not like you go swim out and they give a dolphin $25.
Right.
Once they're there and they're on the beach,
they were all
there,
at the arcade
bro.
pumping quarters.
You got them, man. Yeah. If anything, the water is actually going to cost you money because they're going to just go out there and have
free
fun.
for them.
Yeah.
Well, I would always pump quarters in the water, but I do actually think, even though it seems kind of stupid, the whole thing, this is humans to me. No one's in the water. We're going to stay out of the water. 4 people went in the water.
Yeah.
Let's all go in the water immediately. We're all waiting for that first kid to turn in the test before we can turn in our
and
test.
that's the thing, right? It's that sort of like, you don't want to disturb the herd of humanity by saying there might be a shark.
Which is the mayor's entire thing.
Yeah, because then they all go and they cling together and they hang out on the shore. And then the second one person's like, I'm not afraid of the shark. That fear breaks for everybody. And the whole herd is just into the water as fast as they can, almost trampling each other to get into that water.
Now, if I'm Brody,
trampling each other even harder on the way out.
Yeah.
If I'm Brody, I'm looking at how the mayor dresses, and I'm like, no, absolutely not.
Because of the little anchors?
Yeah.
I liked that suit.
He's wearing a sports jacket that has this like baby blue sports jacket with little white anchors on it to remind everybody this is an island town, bitch.
He's not just the mayor. He's also the clown of the town. Like he's the mascot for everybody. How, aside from like the great filmmaking, how much of the movie's success and rewatchability rests on like the unlikely chemistry between Brody, Hoop, and Quint?
Oh, I think that if you haven't,
because the last half is just 3 dudes on a boat.
It's crazy that part is an hour, and honestly, if you haven't seen it in a while, you think it's more. You know, like it's so important, and he does such a good job of making slow parts and fast parts and slow parts and fast parts, and the slow parts are slow. We talked about this with Dog Day Afternoon, where in the last hour, right when it was ramping up, he made 2 12-minute phone calls. And how much more effective that makes the ending. This has the same thing where like the 3 of them when they're finally together, and it takes a while for Hooper to be introduced, and then Quint post chalkboard is even longer after that. But once the 3 of them are together, we're like, yeah, and we are Brody. You know, like that angle, that the very famous angle of Hooper and Quint at the table is Brody's point of view, and we're just like, yeah, you know what? Let's pour a shot and let's get in there. Let's get drunk.
And
let's wrap our legs around each other.
Let's just wrap our legs right around each other and bring them in. Yeah, I think that when we are in the position of Brody and viewing them, they occupy that annoying yet like lovable quality that they have. And something I forgot about this movie is that it is like 2 different sections. Like I feel like in way more ways than most movies are, where the beginning of it is like the town encounter and figuring out how to handle the shark while in town. But they set out to sea, and it's almost like a completely different chapter of the entire movie opens. That reminds me a lot more of a book than of most movies. And yet, I don't know, it's not jarring, right? It's not like a major strike against it that it has those two distinct sections.
I don't think so. What I do think is that when I'm watching it, when the movie first starts, I'm like, when are we going to get to seeing that orca sail out to sea? You know, like there's that shot of it going, and then we just know we're in that different movie.
Yeah, we're in it now, man.
And I'm waiting for it, but then cannot believe how great the first hour is as well. You know, like the second hour is obviously great. The first hour is more technically sound, and it just...
I kind of feel like the first hour is the better part of the movie, honestly. Like, it's more kind of fun in a way to watch them go be shark hunters. But, like, the view of 1975, of society, of what, like, people are really up to, and how messed up and interesting it is, that's all really so much more the beginning of the movie.
And the greatest Law & Order episode of all time. Like,
dun, dun.
We got it wrong. Oh, okay, now, but we got it wrong. You know, and it just keeps happening.
It's interesting if Jaws had never been made and somebody tried to make it today, or if they, God forbid, remade it. So much of that back half would be intercut with like, here's the mayor doing something else diabolical, or here's checking in on Brody's wife.
It would be a Disney Plus show that we were supposed to watch before the movie came out.
Get the background story. I want to
Speed round.
Sorry, Greg.
No,
we'll
never know.
The speed round. Jaws has been declared the best movie about the COVID-19 pandemic. Has the effectiveness of the movie changed since quarantine began?
I don't think that the mayor was ever as hateable until the last 2 years. I really do think that he's not... I mean, like, he's still the obvious villain of the movie because he makes decisions as opposed to Jaws, who doesn't really. But it was never like, you fucking son of a bitch until the last 2 years.
Or we just didn't realize?
I didn't realize.
What if, in trying to save people's lives, we accidentally lost a little bit of money? Could you imagine if we didn't maximize profitability for this year just because millions of people around the world were dying?
And I love the town hall meeting where you can just hear, you can't see who says it, but in the background you can just hear somebody being like, but my money!
Yeah, man, this is another movie of 75 that has just great crowd chatter. Just anytime they open up to a crowd, there's always someone's like, well, who's walking up now? What's going on? I'm going to look into it.
I hope it was like Dog Day Afternoon where they just let real people into the meeting and just say whatever you want, real people. There's a shark.
Has the iconic score instrumental to the film's success, hold for laughter,
instrumental, that's very good,
had all been ruined by its pop culture ubiquity?
No, I like the greatest way to save money that Spielberg ever came up with was, we'll just put the camera on the front of the shark. We'll make it its POV, and then we don't have to show the shark. And that music is fucking dreadful.
And I think what I think really saves the score is you forget all the lightheartedness that's in the other parts of it. And I just think that this movie would be dreadful if the score was very heavy when it was when the movie was like when the characters were realizing like, oh, we might be screwed here. If the music was really like on top of you in the same way that the Jaws music can be, but instead the music is, they're like, we might all die, and it's like ba, 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 ba. And that keeps the movie like in the fun zone.
Yeah, I will say that much like all of Hollywood learned the wrong lessons from Jaws, so did John Williams. I think that he also started to fucking go off on, you know, like he could have been like a sort of Bernard Herrmann, I'm just going to put music where it's necessary. And I think this movie took him into a different direction.
And I mean,
loud always.
And think about, like, one of the lessons he could have learned was, okay, but, like, think of the negative space created by silence. Because this movie utilizes silence like a fucking weapon. When it is really quiet, at first you're like, oh, this is peaceful. And then you're like, no, I'm freaked out. Yeah. And the quiet is in the beginning of the movie, but it also comes back in the end. The shark attack, they didn't make the shark make any noise, which it wouldn't, obviously, so that's realistic.
I'm a shark!
Rawr, here I come! Chomp, chomp, chomp. I love this boat. But instead...
The whole point was that he loved the boat.
Yeah,
he loved it too much.
He just wants it down where he is. You've ever seen an aquarium? It's always got a little shipwreck in there. They love those things.
Be my little shipwreck.
Yeah. Be my little shipwreck. But the silence pops up again in that scene where the shark is chomping on the boat, and you can hardly hear anything, really. And that is powerful when you've got a lot of, like, timpani in the other places.
Or the other thing where we can hear the boat breaking because the camera moves to other parts of the boat where the drunk three are not.
Yeah.
And that's fucking freaky, and that's sans John Williams.
Did this ever make you scared to go back in the water?
I think that we're too young. I don't know.
I don't think it's
Too savvy?
It has never made me too scared to go into the water, but I have to tell you, I was snorkeling once around Maui, and I would just keep looking. Like you have this coral reef, and that's kind of what you're looking at. But then when you're doing that, your back is just to the deep ocean, and you keep turning around and being like, it gets dark so quick out there. And if something came out of that dark, it would be on me before I would probably even have a chance to turn around. And that's when Jaws comes back to you. That's when you remember.
That's what it knows.
Yeah.
I learned from Richard Dreyfuss, too, if I do get attacked, just drop the single most important thing to the situation, and then Jaws will follow that, and
then
I will be
find
fine.
somewhere in the ocean to hide.
His thing of and maybe he knows the ocean better than me. He's an oceanographer, but he really does find a straight up corner of the ocean.
And they just don't show.
He goes behind. He's like,
yeah,
I disappear forever.
I want to see the Disney Plus episode where he just goes and finds a place in the ocean to hide.
Let's do it, gentlemen. There's 3 of them. There's 3 of us. Which character are we?
Aren't we just 3 Hoopers? No, I guess Ryan could be Quint, maybe.
I don't know. I would say that I'm Brody, the middleman, and Hooper, the smart one. But as someone who only drinks and screams random things at you guys, I could take Quint.
Ryan.
And I guess I got to go with Jawrs, the shark. I think that I'm probably.
Greg is 100% the Hooper. Don't listen to him. Do not listen to him.
I am the hoopiest Hooper that ever exists. In fact, Hooper exists as a character for people like me, who is very.
I'm a hero too.
Actually, is soft. Actually, is a feat. Right. To look at and be like, well, under all that though, is a real tough guy. That's just if it got exposed, would definitely be there.
Okay, some of that's true. Mike is clearly the Brody because he's like, I have to go accomplish something. I guess I'm going to call these 2 again. I don't know why I keep calling them.
I think it might hinder me.
They haven't killed
I
me
like
yet.
that better. I was going to say my penchant for ignoring patterns makes me unfortunately the mayor and how I shove old men into the sea. But I'd rather do Brody. The shark wouldn't work, so Spielberg couldn't show it very much, which made the movie scary, and the shark was called Bruce. Did you know that?
Ryan, yes.
What is this movie trying to say about the divide between big city types and beach towny types?
I think that that you can never, ever, ever be accepted by a small town if you come from New York City.
That really chaps my hide, Greg.
Yeah, there's literally. His wife goes, "What can I do to really be a part of this community?" And she's like, "Nothing ever. You come from somewhere else."
The only thing that there's more of than tourists is chum. And that's what they are. It's just bringing that to the water.
Yeah, I mean, they
and they all look so stupid. They're all like,
even without a shark, right? This town consumes the people that come to it. This is how they eat.
And I don't think the mayor is unaware of that. I think he might be doing all of this on purpose.
Stupid mayor. What if there was a sequel about how the mayor lured the shark here from somewhere else?
I recommend you shut the fuck up.
That is all the time we have for the speed round. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, it's award season. Taste buds, can you believe that Jaws was nominated for 4 Academy Awards and won 3 of those 4?
That's the most heralded movie we've ever done.
I know.
Oh, no, we did
but
American Beauty a long time ago.
Oh, yeah, but that was, I say not enough awards, so we're going to give it to you more. Ryan, starting with you. Time you rooted for the shark the hardest.
Okay, so I was thinking about times where I saw the shark and wanted him or her to do more, but then I realized there was a time where the shark should have been in there. And the fact that Spielberg's first 3 victims are a hippie woman, denoting the end of the 60s, which was obviously on purpose by him, and a child and a puppy, and then we get to watch all of those Bud Light monster-fueled morons go drive and throw grenades at each other.
They basically did the boating for Trump thing where there was enough water for all of them, but they boated so intensely right next to each other they started drowning each other.
In the remake, how many of those boats have MAGA flags flying off
of
them?
all of them, man. It's so weird because it's 25 boats and they're just all sticking together.
If Jaws came then and did more then, and I could root for Jaws to eat all them, I do think that Brody would be like, Island's good. Island is now good, and we should move on.
Greg?
For me, hearing that it might be 2,000 or 3,000 years old, people are so important, obviously, right? They're like the best thing we got is folks. But man, when I hear like a tree is like 9,000 years old or a shark is like 3,000 years old, I'm kind of like, that's so many years though. I don't know. So hearing the shark is real old, I'm like, man, I don't know. He's just a grump.
Can we talk about Greg's forest horror movie where the 3,000-year-old tree just keeps killing children?
Things you always forgot about Jaws, Greg.
I think the thing I legitimately forget is that it's not that it is either cheesy or scary, but that it is, by turns, extremely cheesy and scary. When that
like
head,
Pizza Hut.
when that head pops out, when Richard Dreyfuss is looking at the hole in the boat, it is an obvious mannequin head that pops out, and it scares you and looks so stupid at the same time, and that's Jaws.
Ryan.
The thing I always forget there's actually a lot of these. I always forget the two guys on the dock. I always forget that happens because that happens in the first hour, and it's two people you don't care about. But the dock gets taken away because motherfucking of course it does. And then when the dock comes back, that's so great that they get chased back to shore by the dock.
Killer dock.
Both of those are great.
But for me, I'm sorry. For me,
I thought that was
the actual winner is the accents at the beginning. There's a bit about accents, but still in the first 10 minutes, they really do seem to work on their New York versus Islander accents, and then that is completely dropped. I'll just stop then because Greg got the point, I guess.
They just Kevin Costner away.
Yeah, Greg takes that one because he didn't try to do two. He didn't do his throwaway one such detail that I thought that was it. Cringe, Ryan.
My cringiest moment is I actually think a benefit of the movie. I think that all of Spielberg's film knowledge is coming into play here, and so I do think that he's making the audience cringe more than him. But I'm going to say this anyway. That overweight woman goes out to the water, and the way that the camera shoots her, we all know that she is going to be the victim. Like, we are sort of... Isn't it crazy that with all of these hot people on the beach, with all these hot people that have already died because of the shark, the way that it shoots it is like she's going to be next. And what actually happens is it's a child. And I think that the camera lingers on her a little longer than it should, and is sort of
As a fat person, whenever you see a fellow fat person in a movie, you're like, oh, this person's about to take a tumble.
Yeah.
Or because it's like, here's a real low-stakes way to have violence happen to what we agree is a person, but like a lesser kind of person, so
Right.
it's not that bad because they're probably like stinky and dumb.
At the very least, they're going to break their tooth on a sandwich, or something is going to happen.
Like, you know, like the only thing they don't do is like have the tuba go like, wah, 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 wah,
Yeah,
That's what I thought. I thought
Shocking
John
John
Williams was
Williams
going to
put
bring
that
the
in.
tuba in.
There's another thing that's like that, like the old man with his shirt off. It's supposed to be like, look at this old guy's chest.
A little saggy titties, a little bit. Yeah.
And I'm so fucking sick of that. I'm so tired of being shown an old person's body that's just aged naturally, and I'm supposed to be horrified. Fuck that, dude. I want to look at I want my tits to look like that guy's tits look when I'm his age.
As owners of old people's bodies, yes, that is rough for us.
Yeah, I mean, that guy's like probably 10 years older than I am.
Greg.
There's so much that is legitimately cringy, but I'm just gonna say the nails on the chalkboard, that is a thing for me, and it takes so long, and it literally caused me to cringe, and I was like wearing earphones like I'm wearing now, and I literally stood up out of my chair and knocked them off my head. I'm not okay with that, and it made the movie... This is such a Spielberg thing to do. He's a little boy in a lot of ways. He also wants to gross you out and horrify you and show you mangled bodies, but the nails on the chalkboard, that was a little bit much for me.
It's just the quintiest thing to ever happen.
He could have just been like,
Quint himself, it may be a little cringy. There's a point where the camera is on Brody and his wife, but in the background, Quint is on the boat loading, and he becomes like this Disneyland animatronic, just shouting racist, sexist stuff.
Yeah, really sexist.
And no one is even talking to him. Like, he just does it.
And the wife looks
all that.
horrified.
He didn't know the camera was on him.
That's the last we ever see of the wife, and she looks horrified and basically runs away. And so it's like, it's like a little mini assault.
Actor Greg.
I'm going with Richard Dreyfuss. This guy is like banging on all cylinders in this movie. Is supposed to be annoying, is legit annoying, and yet you like him. I really feel like you go all the way to loving him by the end. And for me personally, like seeing that guy be confirmed as a man, it always makes me feel good because I hope there's a chance for me to one day do something manly.
And I think he said the ultimate thing that you cannot say as a character in a 1975 movie. I'm rich. Like,
Or Dreyfuss.
Mm-hmm.
That was, I think, a little break of the fourth wall.
When he looked right at the camera and said, "I'm Richard Dreyfuss."
Richard Dreyfuss.
But no, in the old 1970s blank is R blank. This movie made me think that 1970s Richard Dreyfuss is our Paul Rudd. Like he sort of has that boyish charm, that smirk, that I can get away with anything.
But you want to hit him.
But you do want to punch him in the mouth.
Yeah.
That's true.
No, because you'll crack the beauty.
I have to go with Robert Shaw. It's a nonstop delight whether he is ruining the movie or making the movie better. He's just making the movie better.
The movie is making adjustments to him all the time.
I agree. But I think pound for pound, what we consider, I need to somehow have a pop filter scale, and it's got to go to the Dreyfuss,
Unbelievable.
the Shaw.
Unbelievable. This podcast is now being booted off the internet.
Not only unbelievable, crumb-believable.
You can't believe.
Oh!
Ryan, director's signature moment.
This one is insane because, so far in our bonus episodes, we've done Death Race 2000 and Day of the Locust, where it's what? I don't know this director, so I'm sort of in the dark here.
That's me every week, but yeah, that's what it's like for you now.
But this is the creation of an entire toolbox, so I don't even it's the opposite problem. I don't know where to go, but I think I figured it out. In the nighttime scene, another mostly forgotten scene, in the nighttime boat investigation, we get it all, and I think the big one is that the Brody and Hoop's boat stops and the destroyed boat is in the foreground.
Such a great shot.
And we just get light and fog and it looks fantasy, but it's not. And that's his whole thing, is that this looks magic, but it's not. But it looks like it, but it's not. John Williams is definitely a part of this.
He tried to light all of AI that way.
Yeah.
We have the anytime anybody in a Spielberg movie has a realization, John Williams sweeps in on a rope and goes,
they might not know.
Thinking going on.
And then we have the creation of a set piece that should not have been there. Richard Dreyfuss, if we think about it, probably should not have gone into the deep dark waters at nighttime.
Even Brody was like, "You don't need to."
What did this to this boat? It's the fucking shark that we've been talking
about. The shark that's all around, who you said feeds at night, motherfucker.
What if we gotta look? We gotta look.
And Richard Dreyfuss is worried about Brody. He's like, but don't touch any equipment. You're the dangerous one here. I'm just going to dive in the water. And then, of course, we get a ton of suspense, a ton of John Williams, and then the head pops out. And I think that it's impossible for Spielberg to not do the classic, oh my God, there's a body. It's not the shark, which we all thought. Shark never makes an appearance. The head pops out. It's a very fake head. This is Spielberg suspense filmmaking. This is why movies rule.
Do you feel like the shark kind of big timed them at all by not appearing in that scene?
Oh, yeah.
He's back in its trailer.
You can't even afford me.
Greg, what do we got?
There's so many shots that I love in this, and I talked about one, the Boy Scout, the ferry island over to the Boy Scouts, but the other one is they are once again saying to the mayor, we gotta shut down the beach, dog. It appears that we got the wrong shark. And they're walking along like this bluff. And then suddenly they walk right into the perfect shot that the whole thing has been setting up, which is of the billboard in the background. And you see the graffito tagging, and you see and then it's referenced. And it's like the way in which that shot just seemed like you're just moving with them on a walk. And then suddenly you get into this hyper composed shot that then actually becomes part of the action, part of what they're talking about, and reinforces what they're talking about. So it's in no way superfluous. That was just one of the times in which I was like, damn, man, you're making the hell out of this movie.
Well, that is a great shot in that movie. But as Ryan said, Spielberg loves to do fantasy, not fantasy, fantasy, not fantasy. Let's go into Ryan. Those are your awards. Much better than the Oscars it won. Recommendations. The last chance for points. If you like Jaws, what do you think they'll like, Greg?
If you like Jaws, I think you'll love
Jaws 2.
Jaws 2. The Meg. Because The Meg features one thing that Jaws does not feature, which is a much bigger shark.
A realistic shark.
Let's face it. Jaws is pretty big, but I think, honestly, when Hooper says he's 20 feet, that's a scientist. And then when Quint says he's 25 feet, that's a fisherman.
So
you gotta go with the scientist. The Meg, I think its mouth is 20 feet. The Meg could swallow this shark. So check it out. Is it a better movie? Yes.
Is the Meg about Megyn Kelly?
Yeah.
I have seen
underwater. Ryan, what do you got?
Okay, so I picked a movie that I don't think has a shark, but you know what? It probably does. It's from 2012, and it's called Kon-Tiki, and it is...
Does that mean with shark?
Yeah.
Christ.
It means with torch, which is how you should go to every party.
Not anymore, Ryan. Not anymore.
What is it? What is it about?
It's a movie. It's a movie about a guy who had this theory about how Peloponnesian people had made it from one point to the other, even though it's impossible for them to sail that far, 2,400 miles, I think it was. And so he built a boat like they would have, and then sold it or sailed it in order to make that distance. And there's a couple of things that reminds me of this movie. One, every time they're on the goddamn orca, I am fucking... It's cringier to me than any part with the shark. That boat is a piece of shit. And I do not know how you would go out into the goddamn ocean on that boat. It's all falling apart even when...
It's Quint, man. It's Quint himself.
Even when Quint is not raging and forcing it to blow black smoke everywhere. That boat is falling apart. And so is this one. But also, I do think the movie has a little bit of Spielberg magic in that this is a true story, and we could tell it as grindy and gritty as possible, but we're going to make it a little bit of a fairy tale and have you not think about that, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, we're going to make you think that it's grindy and grimy and gritty, but it is going to be fairy tale-esque to you.
So this would be better to see even than Moana?
Well, I mean, nothing's better than Moana.
Yeah.
Ryan.
Both for your recommendation and because nothing's better than Moana. Gentlemen, it's time where I have to declare best friend, and this is hard because I love you both so dearly. Ryan, you got 30 points. And I know you're going to be upset because you always think you need more points than that. Greg, you got 28 points. It was a close race, but Ryan, it's hard to beat Ryan when the Spielberg's there.
But I almost did, which I consider a form of winning because I'm a loser.
I thought I got absolutely rocked on that one. Greg, thank you so much for a really fun show.
It was so fun to talk
thank you
about
both.
Jaws. Yeah,
I'm talking to Greg right now, Mike.
Just a little competitor to competitor.
Greg got 29 points, it looks like.
Oh,
Let's see
so
what
close.
happens. No, keep talking to Greg.
No.
So Ryan's my best friend, much to both of our chagrin.
Yeah, everyone's disappointed now.
The only
You guys
better,
are best friends. No one's best friends with me.
The only thing better than a grin is a chagrin. Remember that.
We will be taking a little break from watching movies next week to do something very, very special. I don't know if I want to.
Then why did you? Why would you start down that road?
Or at least like pause a little bit and then move on.
Like, were we supposed to jump?
Yeah, but to like pause and just say nothing.
You could.
I'm gonna pause for dramatic effect, but give you no more information.
Say it or don't say it, dog. Like, I'll cut it out of the episode if I need to, but just say what you're gonna say, honey. Let them know. Let them know.
I think you should let
Ryan
him know.
gets another point for that. Trying to schoolmarm me, Greg.
Darn it!
Motherfuckers, it's 10 years of Pop Filter and we're doing fun shows all season. Keep watching those movies.